As we've talked about before in other videos, that the birth certificate represents, it's called a BC, and of course uh, there's no detail as far as what calendar it's on, so it could be assumed to be an actual before Christ document, which in legal would make sense because legal is the opposite to grace. It's one side says you can earn salvation, the other side is that you cannot earn it. It's something that was given to you as a gift, like life itself. So in the world of legal, you try to make a living out of something that's dead, that would have been dead if it had been judged according to Adamic sin, where there would have been no relief without Christ. As we know, Colossians 2, verses 13 to 15, especially if you're reading out of the New American Standard, we've read it of it many times, says that Christ canceled out the certificate of debt. So it's not at odds that a society of today that are running down a legalism direction is basically carrying actually the burden of a certificate of debt and suretying that to be a member. So out of the there was basically a letter. It was from Colonel Edward Mandell House, a legendary power broker who had private memoirs, and one of them being with Woodrow Wilson, who was the president between 1913 and 1921. I know people have seen this throughout the internet. Some of these have been edited. I'm just saying that I believe that this is probably accurate and true, the one I'm reading from. But it's the key things that are in it that would make me understand that this is actually a warning to the system of those who are in the legal. And so it starts off, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property. That's you, in a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattels, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure our plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debts to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of our dummy corporation to ferment this plot against America. So, when we look at this, they're saying some very key things in here, and of course, a legal path would have no redemption, of course, because it's a doomsday direction. It is the precursor to ruin to be the surety for another. We know that they've used the word secured by their pledges, and we have to really start looking at how that really works in the legal. When we're talking about a birth certificate, and we know that the only legal person known to the law is the body corporate, which means dead body. So if you're pledging yourself as security for something that represents the dead, that's why the names are in reverse. It was the way they used to bring back the dead on the trains during the Civil War. It basically has placed you in as pledging your life to the dead. That's really what you're doing. You're putting your spirit in the dead. So what would that be? Well, that's kind of very simply, that's a dead pledge, which would make this a mortgage, a MORT GAGE. It's a dead pledge. You're pledging for the dead, and therefore you're paying your respects for the dead when you show up at the court. And that's what they do when they summons. They're summoning the dead, and you're showing up there as the living who's the surety for the dead. You're willing to pay for the past. You're willing to act as a legal surety for a debt that you had nothing to do with. So we have to really see that this is there in front of us right now. Much easier to understand this writing because a lot of people have read this. They think they know what's going on, but they really don't understand the construct that's going inside on this writing and what's being said here. And so they had to create a system to register the security holders who are going to act as guarantors for that. And that's where the SIN registration comes in. And that's why they refer to you as Dear Sir when they're writing to you, which is Dear Social Insurance Registrant. And people just don't see how obvious the position they've placed themselves in at the moment. They're kind of blinded when they first, when they're hearing about things like this. Their ears are closed up, usually stopped, and their eyes are blinded because they're being blinded by the money, by greed, because they're chasing something that's going to work injurious to them, and they can't see that. They feel a power somehow by it. And there is some illusionary power people with money have, but they don't realize that cannot buy them salvation. No one is going to be able to purchase their salvation out of this in the legal. The only one who canceled this was in Colossians 2:13-15, speaking of God's Son who came to cancel the debt. He canceled sin, debt, and guilt, as if it never had occurred in the Garden of Eden with Adam. So you can continue being part of an damnation that's damming up the flow of the river of currency in your private bank account, thinking there's not going to be any ramifications. But the doomsday clock is ticking, and it's ticking closer to a big disaster. We'll call it a big global reset, a nice spin for the spin doctors who spin the theories of globalist agenda, but that's what it is, and it's coming your way, and they will take what you think is yours, because it isn't yours to begin with. You registered it into their title house, and the house always wins in the gamble that you're taking. So take it to heart, but read things carefully, and you will understand what is going on around you.